Could Mexico's legal maneuvers undermine our cherished Second Amendment rights? As an ardent defender of these freedoms, I find it imperative to shed light on a pressing issue: the Mexican government's lawsuit against American firearm manufacturers and its potential ramifications on the upcoming Supreme Court case, Smith & Wesson Brands, Inc. v. Estados Unidos Mexicanos. In 2021, Mexico initiated a $10 billion lawsuit against prominent U.S. gun makers, including Smith & Wesson, Glock, and Colt. The allegation that these companies' business practices have inadvertently facilitated the illegal trafficking of firearms to Mexican drug cartels, thereby exacerbating violence within their borders. This lawsuit isn't just a legal dispute. It poses a direct challenge to the protections afforded by the PLCAA of 2005. They was enacted to shield firearm manufacturers and dealers from being held liable when crimes are committed with their products, ensuring that law-abiding companies aren't punished for the misdeeds of criminals. However, Mexico's legal action seeks to circumvent this federal law, aiming to hold U.S. manufacturers accountable for crimes occurring extraterritorially. This not only questions the sovereignty of American law, but also sets a precarious precedent that could embolden other foreign entities to challenge our domestic policies and industries. As the Supreme Court prepares to hear this case on March 4, 2025, the stakes couldn't be higher. A ruling favoring Mexico could potentially open the floodgates for similar lawsuits, jeopardizing the very foundation of our Second Amendment rights. It's crucial to understand the intricacies of this case and recognize the broader implications it holds for gun owners and manufacturers across the nation. The lawsuit, officially titled Estados Unidos Mexicanos vs. Smith & Wesson Brands Inc., asserts that American firearm manufacturers' practices have negligently enabled the flow of weapons into Mexico, subsequently empowering drug cartels and escalating violence. Mexico contends that these companies have not implemented adequate measures to prevent their firearms from being trafficked across the border, thereby contributing to the country's crime epidemic. This legal action is unprecedented. Historically, the PLCAA has provided robust immunity to gun manufacturers against lawsuits attempting to hold them liable for crimes committed with their products. The act was designed to prevent exactly this type of litigation, ensuring that manufacturers aren't unjustly penalized for the independent actions of third parties. By pursuing this lawsuit, Mexico aims to bypass the PLCAA's protections, setting a dangerous legal precedent. The controversy doesn't end there. This lawsuit has garnered support from various U.S. anti-gun politicians and advocacy groups who view it as a backdoor method to impose stricter regulations on the firearms industry. By aligning with a foreign government's legal strategy, these domestic entities are effectively endorsing external interference in U.S. constitutional matters. Such collaboration raises critical questions about national sovereignty and the lengths to which some will go to challenge the Second Amendment. Moreover, the implications of this case extend beyond the immediate parties involved. Should the Supreme Court rule in favor of Mexico, it could pave the way for a slew of similar lawsuits from other countries, each seeking to hold U.S. manufacturers accountable for crimes committed within their borders. This could lead to increased operational costs for these companies, potential bankruptcies, and a chilling effect on the entire firearms industry. Such outcomes would not only impact manufacturers, but also law-abiding citizens exercising their right to bear arms. As we approach the oral arguments scheduled for March 4, 2025, it's imperative to stay informed and recognize the broader consequences this case may have on our rights and the firearms industry at large. In a decisive move to combat the escalating drug crisis, President Donald Trump signed an executive order on January 20, 2025, initiating the process to designate certain international cartels as foreign terrorist organizations (FTOs). This action specifically targets 6 Mexican drug cartels: the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, Familia Michoacana, Gulf Cartel, Northeast Cartel, and Carteles Unidos. The primary objective is to elevate the fight against these cartels to a matter of national security, thereby enabling the U.S. government to employ a broader range of tools and strategies to dismantle their operations. Designating these cartels as FTOs carries significant implications. It authorizes the U.S. government to freeze assets linked to these organizations, restrict their access to financial systems, and impose stringent travel bans on their members. Additionally, it facilitates enhanced surveillance and intelligence gathering efforts, allowing for more coordinated and effective law enforcement actions. This designation also opens the door for potential military interventions, akin to operations conducted against recognized terrorist groups, thereby intensifying the pressure on these cartels. However, this initiative has elicited a strong response from the Mexican government. President Claudia Sheinbaum has criticized the U.S. for harboring drug cartels and highlighted the involvement of American citizens in illegal drug trafficking activities within Mexico. She emphasized a 450% increase in arrests of U.S. citizens for organized crime during the tenure of her predecessor, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and called on Washington to address its internal drug trafficking issues. Sheinbaum's remarks underscore Mexico's concerns about potential violations of its sovereignty and the complexities of cross-border criminal activities. The Mexican government's apprehension is further amplified by the potential for U.S. military action on Mexican soil, which could be perceived as an infringement on national sovereignty. This tension highlights the delicate balance between collaborative efforts to combat drug trafficking and the assertion of national autonomy. The situation is further complicated by the fact that over two-thirds of the 4,000 foreigners arrested for organized crime in Mexico over the past 6 years have been Americans, indicating a binational dimension to the issue. As the U.S. escalates its efforts to combat these cartels through the FTO designation, it is imperative to consider the broader geopolitical implications. While the goal is to curb the influence and operations of these dangerous organizations, the approach must be carefully calibrated to respect international boundaries and foster cooperation between nations committed to addressing the shared challenges of drug trafficking and organized crime. The Mexican government's narrative places significant blame on U.S. gun stores, alleging that they are the primary source of firearms for drug cartels. However, this perspective overlooks a critical internal issue: the pervasive corruption within Mexico's own institutions, which significantly contributes to the empowerment and proliferation of these criminal organizations. Since 2006, Mexico has been embroiled in a violent struggle against drug cartels, resulting in over 480,000 deaths. Despite various administrations pledging to combat these organizations, the cartels have only grown more powerful and brazen. This persistent violence raises pressing questions about the effectiveness of Mexico's strategies and the potential complicity of government officials. A striking indicator of this internal challenge is the dramatic increase in arrests of U.S. citizens involved in cartel-related activities within Mexico. During President López Obrador's tenure from 2018 to 2024, there was a staggering 457% rise in such arrests, totaling 2,500 compared to 449 in the previous administration. This surge suggests not only a growing collaboration between American individuals and Mexican cartels, but also highlights the cartels' deep-rooted influence and operational reach within Mexico. The entrenchment of cartels in Mexican society is further evidenced by their ability to control large swathes of territory, often outgunning and outmaneuvering local law enforcement. This dominance is not solely due to external factors such as the alleged influx of firearms from the U.S., but is also a consequence of systemic issues within Mexico, including corruption, inadequate law enforcement training, and a lack of political will to implement comprehensive reforms. Moreover, the Mexican government's resistance to U.S. initiatives, such as the designation of cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, raises questions about its commitment to eradicating these groups. While concerns about national sovereignty are valid, the outright dismissal of collaborative efforts suggests a reluctance to address the internal factors that enable cartel operations. This stance not only hampers bilateral cooperation, but also undermines the potential for a unified and effective response to a problem that transcends borders. In light of these realities, it becomes evident that attributing the cartel problem primarily to external sources such as U.S. gun manufacturers is a deflection from the core issues. Addressing the cartel crisis necessitates a critical examination of Mexico's internal challenges, including corruption and institutional weaknesses, which have allowed these criminal organizations to flourish. Without confronting these domestic issues, efforts to curb cartel violence are likely to remain ineffective, perpetuating a cycle of blame and inaction that benefits no one except the cartels themselves. The Supreme Court is poised to hear the pivotal case of Smith & Wesson Brands, Inc. da Estados Unidos Mexicanos during its 2024 to 2025 term. This lawsuit, initiated by the Mexican government, seeks to hold U.S. firearm manufacturers accountable for the rampant gun violence perpetrated by drug cartels within Mexico's borders. Central to this legal battle is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act of 2005, a federal statute designed to shield gun manufacturers and dealers from liability when their legally sold products are later used unlawfully by third parties. The PLCAA was enacted to prevent the firearms industry from being inundated with frivolous lawsuits that could cripple its operations and, by extension, impinge upon the Second Amendment rights of American citizens. However, the PLCAA is not an impenetrable shield. It delineates specific exceptions under which legal action can proceed. One such exception is the predicate exception, which permits lawsuits if a manufacturer or seller knowingly violates a state or federal statute applicable to the sale or marketing of firearms, and that violation is a proximate cause of the harm. In this context, Mexico alleges that U.S. gun manufacturers have engaged in practices that contravene laws designed to prevent firearm trafficking, thereby facilitating the flow of weapons into the hands of criminal organizations across the border. The crux of the debate lies in whether the actions of these manufacturers can be directly linked, both legally and causally, to the atrocities committed by Mexican drug cartels. The implications of the Supreme Court's forthcoming decision are profound. A ruling in favor of Mexico could potentially erode the protections afforded by the PLCAA, exposing firearm manufacturers to a deluge of litigation not only from foreign governments but also from various domestic entities seeking to hold them accountable for crimes committed with their products. Such a precedent could destabilize the firearms industry, leading to increased costs, restricted innovation, and a hesitancy to engage in lawful commerce due to the looming threat of legal repercussions. Moreover, it could embolden efforts to undermine the Second Amendment by targeting the very entities that supply firearms to law-abiding citizens. As the nation awaits the Supreme Court's deliberation, it is imperative to recognize that this case transcends a mere legal dispute between a foreign government and private corporations. At its core, it challenges the foundational principles that protect lawful commerce and the constitutional rights of American citizens. The outcome will not only determine the extent of liability that firearm manufacturers may bear, but also signal how resilient our legal safeguards are against external pressures seeking to reshape domestic policy. The lawsuit brought forth by Mexico against U.S. gun manufacturers is not an isolated incident. It is emblematic of a broader, coordinated strategy aimed at undermining the Second Amendment rights of American citizens. This multifaceted approach involves a confluence of foreign governments, domestic anti-gun politicians, and advocacy groups, all converging to challenge the legal protections that have long safeguarded the firearms industry and, by extension, the constitutional rights of individuals. Notably, several U.S.-based gun control organizations have expressed support for Mexico's legal actions. For instance, Global Action on Gun Violence, GAGV, has collaborated with the Mexican government, assisting in the development of legal strategies aimed at holding American gun manufacturers accountable for violence perpetrated by Mexican drug cartels. This alliance underscores a deliberate effort to circumvent domestic legislative processes by leveraging international legal systems to achieve stricter gun control measures within the United States. Such tactics raise critical questions about national sovereignty and the appropriateness of foreign entities influencing U.S. constitutional matters. The potential ramifications of a legal precedent that holds manufacturers liable for the criminal misuse of their products are far-reaching. Beyond the immediate financial and operational impact on the firearms industry, such a precedent could embolden further legal challenges against other sectors, wherein manufacturers might be held accountable for the actions of end users. This could lead to a cascade of litigation, stifling innovation and commerce across various industries. Moreover, this strategy reflects a broader trend of utilizing the judiciary to effectuate policy changes that have not garnered sufficient support through democratic legislative processes. By seeking to achieve in courts what has been unattainable in legislatures, these coordinated efforts pose a significant challenge to the balance of powers and the foundational principles of representative governance. As this legal battle unfolds, it is imperative for proponents of the Second Amendment and defenders of constitutional rights to remain vigilant. Understanding the interconnected nature of these efforts is crucial in formulating effective responses that uphold the integrity of individual liberties against encroachments, whether they originate from domestic or international actors. In light of the escalating challenges to our Second Amendment rights, it is incumbent upon gun owners to take proactive measures to safeguard these liberties. Engagement, education, and advocacy form the triad of an effective defense strategy. Stay informed. Knowledge is a powerful tool. Regularly monitor reputable news outlets and legal analyses to stay abreast of developments in cases like Smith and Wesson brands, Inc. versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. Understanding the nuances of such legal battles enables informed discussions and more effective advocacy. Support pro-Second Amendment organizations. Numerous organizations are at the forefront of legal and legislative battles to protect gun rights. Consider supporting groups such as the NRA, Gun Owners of America, GOA, and the Firearms Policy Coalition, FPC. These entities utilize member contributions to fund litigation, lobby for favorable legislation, and promote firearm education and safety. Engage with lawmakers. Direct communication with elected representatives is vital. Express your concerns regarding attempts to undermine the PLCAA and other protective legislation. Personalized letters, phone calls, and participation in town hall meetings can influence policymakers' positions on critical issues. The battle over our Second Amendment rights has intensified, with the Mexican government, anti-gun politicians, and global advocacy groups aligning to hold U.S. gun manufacturers responsible for cartel violence. This legal offensive, culminating in Smith & Wesson versus Mexico, represents an existential threat to the PLCAA and could set a precedent allowing foreign governments to dictate American firearm policy. The Supreme Court's decision will be critical. If Mexico prevails, it could open the door to future lawsuits that seek to cripple the firearms industry and erode the constitutional rights of American gun owners. Now, more than ever, we must remain vigilant, informed, and engaged. Support Second Amendment organizations, contact your representatives, and participate in elections. Share this video, subscribe for updates, and help defend our rights. The fight isn't just in court, it's in our hands.